It's my pleasure to introduce John to you all. I mean, John is based in Oxford. Many of you will know John as a teacher trainer, and I'm sure you've had the pleasure of many of you've had the pleasure of attending face-to-face training with John. John also teaches at the University of Oxford, and of course he is an ELT author and author of our latest great general English course for adults, Language Hub. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this, get hold of your Macmillan person and ask to see a copy of the book. And John is here today to tell us all about the importance of pre-task planning in classroom speaking activities. So warm welcome to you, John, and over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Hello, everybody. It sounds like you can see me and hear me okay, which is great. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. As Mike just said, it does seem that there are people from all four corners of the earth. Okay, we've got quite a lot to cover, so I'll begin. At times, I'll hopefully be asking you some questions. Maybe if you can do a quick response in the chat box to make this as interactive as we can. I hope that sounds okay. Okay. So, firstly, if this is loading, okay, these are some ways to contact me. I think you'll be able to get a copy of this later, but if anybody wants to contact me directly for any reason, there are some ways you can contact me. You don't need to write those down now, but I think you should be able to get them at some point, maybe when you get if you get the recording of this, and so on and so on. Okay, so hello everybody, let's begin. This session essentially has three areas. There are three things in this session. One, we'll be thinking about and looking at some examples of extended speaking activities, and we'll begin by thinking, what do we mean by extended speaking? Then a main focus will be that we will be looking at planning before we speak. Basically, very simply, planning what you say before you say it. There's some very interesting research, some very interesting evidence about the usefulness of planning. Okay, a few people are saying there's a bad sound. Can people see me okay? Yeah, some of you can hear me fine, some not so good. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm afraid a few of you may be having a problem, so I'm not sure. Maybe you can sort of switch on and off. Okay. Anyway, and the third area we're going to look at, I'm going to take you inside some ELT research, some of my own research, as well as some other research, which hopefully will be interesting for those of you involved in ELT research. Hopefully it will be interesting for those of you who are not, but maybe perhaps it will be of interest. And even if you're not and have no intention of being involved in ELT research, I hope it'll be interesting to give you an idea of some of the thinking and the academic background to what we do in the course books. Okay, so let's begin. What is extended speaking? What do we mean by that? Well, I did a little bit of a Google search, and I came up with this. I found this on Google. Extended speaking is a type of speaking activity that involves learners speaking for longer periods of time and in a freer form than controlled speaking practice. So what do we mean by longer periods of time and in a freer form? Well, I've observed classes in some countries where if the student says a sentence, that's extended speaking. I've also observed classes in other parts of the world where the students will speak for minutes and minutes and 20 minutes and so on. So I guess it depends on the context. But what we mean is, I think what it says here, longer than something that's controlled, longer when you've got the freedom to express yourself and express your own ideas rather than being forced or having to practice certain structures and certain forms. Okay, let's move on. Okay, the slide is loaded. So what kind of extended speaking tasks are there? So maybe what kind of speaking tasks are there? Maybe you can just put in the chat box the different kinds of extended speaking tasks that we may have? Role play, exactly. A debate, good. Retelling a story, exams, presentations, discussions, describing a picture, small talk, good. Monologues, good. We're going to tell an anecdote, Naomi. Yeah, monologues and anecdote. We're going to look at those in a bit of detail later on. Okay, great, good. Problem solving, debates, discussions. Okay, and questions and answers. Excellent. Okay, so here are a few. They happen to be from Language Hub. A debate. Here's a debate on, what's better, box sets or on demand or traditional shows. Okay. Of course, these exercises will be scaffolded. It won't just be talk about that. There'll be something to lead you in and maybe give you some of the language you need and so on. So there's an example of a debate. Role play. Okay. I think we probably all do role plays or have done role plays at some time. Surveys. I'm not sure whether anyone mentioned a survey. Okay. But, surveys is a kind of extended speaking, preparing it, planning it, asking it, reporting back on it. And this is a survey about everyday things that make people happy. Now, there was some research by a marketing firm, and they wanted to use this in their marketing. I think it was a food company, the everyday little things. And here are some of the things that make people happy. Getting into bed after a long day. When I find a bargain in the shops, relaxing with a good book. I asked this question at a workshop in Malta about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and somebody said, what makes them happier than anything is opening a new lip balm for the first time. And that first stroke of the lip balm. Slime, no, it's lip balm. Okay, so maybe I'll just give you 20 seconds or 10 or 20 seconds. Have a think. What little things in everyday things in life make you happy? Really, lol, yes, the lip balm. Okay, so maybe you'd like to type. For me, for example, it's a glass of wine and my vinyl records. Going home to the dog, a walk with the dog, putting on your pajamas, receiving a gift, smelling a flower. Yes, sleeping, enough sleep. Okay, your cat, a new book, opening a new book for the first time. Yes, that nice, neat book. Okay, some nice ideas there. A cup of tea. Watching a webinar, did I see someone say? Good, good. Okay. Driving. Yeah, I like driving. Yeah, if it's not too long. Not having to rush, being able to go somewhere. Okay, this is great. Good, 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 good. So nobody else shares the... opening the lip balm for the first time. I thought that was a nice one. Going out alone. Okay, so this is a kind of survey that you could do. And again, it's not just cold. It's been scaffolded. There's a bit of introduction to it, looking at the language, getting some ideas. So that's another kind of extended speaking that we could have and do a little class survey and then maybe share your findings. Okay, great. Good, good. A hot, frothy cappuccino. Yes, I think I'll be having one of those after this webinar. Okay. Here's another kind of speaking task. Okay, decision making. Sharing your opinions. Of course, this is good for practicing language of opinion. And here's something else from the Language Hub B1, where you have to choose your favorite animal picture. And again, there's a reading text to give you some ideas. There's some information about what makes a good picture, the qualities of a good picture. So would you like to so I know you're out there and that you're listening, which of those pictures do you prefer? Do you have a favorite one of those? E, the fish, like the Nemo fish. Yeah, the fish seems popular. The penguins. I think the fish is winning so far. The polar bear, good. The elephant. Yeah, the elephant's quite an unusual. Well, not your classic. The puffin. The puffin's my favorite. Yeah, I don't know who said. There's a few puffins. That's great. Okay. And again, this, as I said, this is based on, the students would draw on information about what makes a good picture. Then they would share their ideas. So there's another extended speaking activity. Okay. And we'll look at one more. And somebody mentioned presentation. So here's an example of a presentation. This is a presentation about sort of a natural wonder. And what we do here is you listen to somebody giving a brief presentation as a model. you've got these ideas. Where is it located? What is it surrounded by? Why are people attracted to it? I've been there. So have I, Dolores. That's why I put it in the book. It's a great place, isn't it? So you listen to a presentation, then you can prepare your own presentation. Okay, so that's just an example of a few kinds of speaking activities that we can do. There are, of course, of other ones, but they're a nice range of different extended speaking. And the key thing is, most of them, you're expressing your own ideas. It's freer than some controlled practice. Okay, so let's move on and think about, why do extended speaking tasks? Would anyone like to put anything in the chat? But why do extended speaking tasks where the students can express their own ideas? Okay. There's not so much interaction in presentation, although there can be. Yeah. Real language, real situation, fluency. Students like them. Excellent. I think it's also build confidence. I was just and communicates. It prepares for real life. It replicates to a certain extent real life. Helps develop fluency. Good. Focus on communication. Excellent. Okay, here are some ideas that I have put down. I think we've maybe looked at. So I'll just let you look at those for a few seconds, and then maybe we'll touch on one or two of them. Yes, it personalizes, and personalizing doesn't necessarily mean talking about your own personal interest and experience, but maybe, expressing your opinions and your ideas, your interpretation of something. A lot of them can be authentic. Yes, you'd been to a place like the Gullfoss Falls and you would tell somebody about it, etc., etc. Motivating, I think, enhances group dynamics, group cohesion, a sense of community, if it's an interactive thing. Real-time production, exactly, rather than heavily prepared. I think there's a place for preparation of a prepared presentation, but even so, the actual delivery would be in real time unless you're reading off a script. So, compelling reasons for having extended speaking. I'd like now to focus on the bottom two. It bridges the divide between fluency and accuracy. So these controlled exercises, for example, make 3 sentences with the second conditional, there's very much a focus on accuracy. But I think extended speaking, it bridges the divide between the two. And one key aspect of this is to allow planning time. And this is what I want us to look at now, the sort of second section, if you like, of this webinar, the usefulness, the importance of allowing our students to plan what they want to say before they say it. So, okay. We have accuracy, we have fluency, and one way that we can bridge accuracy and fluency is by planning. Okay, so what do I mean by planning? I don't mean lesson planning. I don't mean us planning our lessons. I simply mean allowing the students to plan, to think about what they want to say for a little while before they say it. And this can make a big, big difference to their output. And this is what I want to look at now. We're going to sort of look at some compelling research data, evidence that planning can make a difference. Brainstorming Immaculata can be an aspect of planning, but I'm thinking of the students on their own for however long, a few seconds, a few minutes, just thinking about what they want to say. So there are pros and cons to allowing our students to plan. We do it in that exams, yes, in the IELTS, for example, yes. There are pros and cons to getting our students to plan. Can you think of any pros or any cons of allowing students to plan what they say before they say it in the classroom? It takes time. Yes, it can take important classroom time. Yes. They feel more secure. Exactly. Yes, you can feel more confident if you're prepared what you want to say. It can help with accuracy. This is what we're going to talk about. Somebody said that. Yes. Under con, the spontaneous skill of answering questions could be lost. Okay. Yeah. If you do too much planning, perhaps. Okay. It can help with accuracy. Yes. This is what we're going to be thinking. Overthinking, I guess you mean, is maybe a con. You think too much. That maybe detracts from the spontaneity and the fluency. They might just read it out, Fatima, if they've written it down. But by planning, I don't necessarily mean writing it down, maybe just thinking about what to say. Okay, good. So some nice ideas of pros and cons. So let's have a look at some of those pros and cons. One anti-planning reason, if you like, is that it's not representative of real world situations. It's therefore not indicative of the learner's real world proficiency. And there has been, and there is, a frequent argument against planning time in the IELTS test. Of course, the IELTS speaking part 2, where you get some prompts, you have 1 minute to think about what to say, and then you speak for 2 minutes. There's an argument that you shouldn't have the planning time because it's not indicative of the student's actual proficiency. Okay. And we have a lot of other anti-planning or cons, if you like, that people have mentioned. Classroom time is one, managing the time is one. Okay. However, sorry, I'll just move on to the next slide. Anticipating what sort of language is needed in a given situation is similar to what we do in real life. So even though the idea is we don't plan in the real world, we actually do. A good second language learner will anticipate what they need to say. They will anticipate what the response might be, and then maybe start to anticipate their response to that. So anticipating and planning is a real world skill. So there's two sides of the coin there. Okay. Pro planning. Okay. Patrick Howarth. Planned speech can give the speaker the opportunity to experiment and therefore develop language. This, I think, is a very important thing, and this can help with the development of our interlanguage. So the process of planning enables us to maybe try something out that we wouldn't ordinarily say if we were speaking spontaneously, which in turn can become incorporated into our English interlanguage and help with our language development. Okay, so not the actual act of speaking, but the actual act of planning can also be key to helping us develop our language. Task repetition helps in the same way. It's a similar process. Okay. There's a lot of evidence. Now, this is where we're just going to look for a while at some research. As you can see, Pauline Foster and Peter Skayen are very involved in pre-task planning. So planning a task before you do it in ELT is a kind of little academic sub area. It's a subfield. There's a lot of research. Gillian Wigglesworth, Rod Ellis, who some of you may know, they've all done a lot of research into the effects of planning a speaking task before you actually speak it. Okay. And what they have shown consistently over the years, that you generally attempt more ambitious language, you attempt more complex language, and you hesitate less. And that's the general summary that research again and again shows. It's kind of, on the one hand, obvious. If you plan something, you're going to do it better. But there's a lot of actual compelling evidence that quantifies this. So let's look at another slide, if it's opening. Okay, so Pauline Foster did some research, and she asked some people to do a speaking task, and some of the participants didn't plan. It was, can you talk about this? Go. And on average, in a 5-minute speaking task, there were 25 pauses and 90 seconds of silence. So when the learner didn't plan, they just spoke spontaneously, they were silent for 1.5 minutes of the 5 minutes. Okay, this is a summary of some very detailed research by Pauline Foster. When participants did the task, but they did plan, they had a few minutes to think about what to say. What do you think happened to these figures? Maybe you'd like to put them in the chat box. The number of pauses was not 25. How many pauses do you think were in 5 minutes when they planned? And how many silence? 10 pauses, 40, okay, 3, 7 pauses, 10, 5, 10 and 15. Okay, a lot of you are kind of in the right area. Okay, and here we go. Are you ready for the big reveal? Yeah, so when learners planned the task, pauses were approximately half and silence was 90 seconds down to 21 seconds. So this clearly meant that if you plan, your fluency is vastly increased. Fewer pauses, less silence. Why is this? Well, it's basically because when you do your planning, you've kind of decided what you want to talk about. Therefore, when you do the speaking, you can focus more on how to say it. A lot of these silences, a lot of the pauses when you don't plan is thinking about what to say. So we kind of get the what to say out of the way, and our brain can focus more on how to say it. Okay, but let's look at this in a little more detail. So in summary, pre-task planning can impact positively on language performance in terms of fluency and complexity. Yes, a lot of research evidence over 20, 30 years, you're more fluent, you pause less, you hesitate less, there's less silence, and you attempt more complex language. This idea that you've got the opportunity to think about, how do I say that? And you can find the language that maybe when you're speaking spontaneously, you don't. However, there's a lot of the research on accuracy was inconsistent and inconclusive. So as well as looking at fluency and the number of pauses, a lot of research was, if you plan, are you more accurate? Is your grammar improved? And over the years, there'd been no conclusive research. For example, Rod Ellis researched, is your grammar more accurate if you plan? And he showed it was. I think 2 or 3 years later, he repeated the research and it showed there was no improvement. Over the years, all these people, and these are just a few examples of the many people who have researched the effects of pre-task planning on accuracy, there was inconsistent and contradictory research. Now, my big passion, my big interest is grammar. So I decided, and this was actually my master's research, I decided to try and fill this little niche in the field. And I decided to investigate the effects of pre-task planning on accuracy. So I set out to try and research, if you spend a few minutes planning what you want to say before you say it, are you more accurate? As I said, lots of compelling evidence, you're more fluent, you pause less, great. Are you more accurate? So I set out to research this. Okay, so what did I do? Well, I'm going to now give you, this is the third section where I said we'll just have a little look at some ELT research, which I hope is interesting for you, whether you're involved in research or not, but you know, an example of the kind of academic research which goes behind the stuff that appears in our course books. Okay, I got 50 participants, 50 speakers, second language, English as a second language learners. Some of them were teachers, most of them were students. Some of them were my students, some of them were students that I borrowed from other people. And I gave them a task similar to this. This is maybe a familiar kind of task. It's a kind of anecdote activity. So this was task A. You're going to talk for 2 or 3 minutes about your favorite film or a film you like. Okay. What type of film is it? What the main story? So There was also task B, which was not about a film, it was about a piece of music or a song. So there were two similar tasks. Each participant did one of the tasks with or without planning, and the other task with or without planning. So I could compare a student, a learner of English, doing a task with and without planning. And I could measure how accurate they were and compare their accuracy. Okay, I hope that's clear. Students who give time for planning. I didn't quite catch that question, Sarah, but we'll maybe look at it later if we have time. Okay, which one was first? If you mean the planning, well, I consulted the statisticians at the university, and the simplest way, the most random way, is to toss a coin. So, for example, I tossed a coin, heads for A, tails for B. I then tossed a coin, heads for planning, tails for not planning. So they maybe did task A first with planning, or task A first without planning, or task B first without planning, and so on and so on and so on. It was, the statistician said, tossing a coin literally is the most random way, instead of this random software generator stuff, software random generator stuff. Okay, so there was no bias. Some planned first, then planned second. Some did task A with planning and without. Okay, anyway, so here we are now going to listen to one of my participants. This is a task, and this is a kind of classroom task. Are we all familiar with the film Shrek? A quick yes, no. Do we know the film Shrek? Yes, yes. Okay, good. Anyway, so we're now going to listen to one of the participants in the research. She had this. She spent 2 or 3 minutes thinking about what she wanted to say, and then she spoke. We're going to listen to it, and what I'd like you to do is listen. Do you think she enjoyed the task? Do you think it was a useful task for her? And can you hear any grammar mistakes? Okay, just see 3 things. Did she enjoy it? Do you think it was a useful task? And do you hear any grammar mistakes? I'm just going to play the sound, so hopefully this will work okay. Hang on. Right, are we ready? Sabina, maybe you can tell me what the level of the student was when you have a listen.
A particularly like movie called Shrek is a comedy full of humor, and it's for people of all ages, even when it's an animated movie, but it's for everyone. It's a movie, but it's for everyone. It's about an ogre that falls in love with a princess. But I think that it's a nice film because it teaches you about friendship and love and not giving up to things even when they seem very difficult. I saw Shrek when I was younger with my family, my dad, my mom, my sister, everyone, and we had a nice time watching it and laughing about it. And it had an excellent music and instrumental music for being an animated movie, and I would recommend this film to everyone, even to little kids and adults, and for those who are getting on a bit, and to everybody. So that's it.
Okay. I'm just going back to the presentation, and I'm just going to go back to the slide. Wait, just bear with me for one moment. Okay. Okay, good. So that's an example of that was something from my research, but that is an example of a very simple extended speaking classroom task. Did she enjoy it? I heard some of you saying, I think she did enjoy it. She is from Argentina. Her name is Alejandra, and she was in Oxford in grey, cold January, when in Argentina it was the middle of the summer. So I think it was a really nice experience for her. She said she enjoyed doing it. She connected back with her family. I think you could hear in her voice that she really enjoyed the task. So I think on that level, this kind of speaking activity is great. Okay. She didn't answer all of these questions. She didn't discuss all of these things. She didn't mention the actors or the director, but I think these prompts helped her to think about what to say. Okay, she talked about the music. She said she'd recommend it, and at the end, you may recall she used the expression, "It's good for people of all ages, especially for those who are getting on a bit." And then she had a little laugh and a smile to herself. Why do you think she used the phrase for those students who are getting on a bit? And the answer is, we had looked at that in the previous class. And that's a nice example of this idea that when you've got the time to plan and prepare, you'll maybe try and increase your complexity. You will maybe push yourself a little bit. Had that been spontaneous, maybe she wouldn't have thought of putting in that phrase from the class before. But because she had the chance to plan, she was able to use it. She's probably then added that firmly to her interlanguage, and that's a phrase that once she'd used it, she's probably now going to remember. So I think that's one little example of how we can sort of increase our complexity. Okay, level, yeah, she was probably a B1 plus. You know, I mean, I saw a range. I love you saying B1. I think she was a very strong B1, possibly B2. I can't quite remember exactly, but she was a good speaker. She definitely enjoyed it. Okay. Now, let's get back to the main purpose of that. Did we hear any grammar mistakes? I saw some of you putting in a few mistakes. She teach, and she repeated, it teach, it teach. She repeated it. Any of the mistakes that you heard? There was one or two article mistakes. Yes. The tenses, I think her tenses were okay. Her pronunciation, a few little issues, but let's think about the grammar. Okay. Yes, but not impeding. Exactly. Third person singular. Music. Lose me a yes. Okay. Well, she didn't correct herself. So this is a copy of what she did. Okay. And I've highlighted in red for the purpose of the research, the grammar areas. So I identified 6 grammar mistakes, if you like, 6 grammar errors. We can call them slips or errors, but the point is I was researching your accuracy. Okay. Even when, of course, should be even it should be an animated. And it teach, she realized she'd made an error. She tried to repair, but she repeated the error again. So I had to call that 2 mistakes, sadly. Had she successfully corrected the error, it would have been 0. So back to the research. As I said, even though that in itself is a great little exercise, I think it was a very positive experience for her. She had a chance to sort of push herself. She connected with home. It was a nice positive experience. It was mainly for my research. So I identified 25 clauses and 6 errors. Okay. The target of this activity was accuracy, Veronica. Yes, this was something from my research, researching accuracy when you speak. In the classroom, you may or may not decide to focus on the accuracy. That's your call as a teacher. Okay. Anyway, there were 25 clauses, 6 errors, which was 24% inaccuracy. Quick bit of maths, 6 over 25, which then gave her an accuracy of 76%. There's no punctuation, Olena, because technically when you script spoken language, you shouldn't use pronunciation, because when we speak, we don't use pronunciation. full stop. So technically, in academic context, you don't punctuate text when you write it. That's a side issue. So, okay, she had 76% accuracy. Don't worry about the maths too much. Did the student know? Yes, the student knew I was doing some research because they had to sign the ethics form, etc. Oh, I had, yes. The student were aware they were part of. Dolores, I gave them the opportunity to make notes or not. Some of them made a few little notes. Some of them didn't make notes. That was their choice. A bit like the IELTS, you can or you can't. Okay. So anyway, 6 errors, 25 clauses, a bit of maths, 76% accuracy. And what happened, if the slide will open? Okay, this is a little snapshot of what happened. NP, when they didn't plan. PTP, when they did plan. And then the third column is the increase or not in accuracy. This is just, I think, 10 of the 50 participants. As you can see, the third one, there was no change. They were equally accurate when they planned and didn't plan. One person, if you look at the fourth one down, -4, one person was more inaccurate when they planned. However, 48 PTP is pre-task planning. NP, they didn't plan, they just spoke. Pre-task planning, they had a few minutes to plan and then they spoke. And basically, this is just a few examples, but 48 of the 50 showed an increase in accuracy when they planned. And the statisticians at the university did lots of tests and they said that was very significant. I haven't published it. No, I was asked to, but I'm just too busy, or I was just too busy. So 48 were more accurate. I just saw a question there, were they the same level? No, they were different levels. And interestingly, if you look sort of down here, you can see some of them were 25, 24, 30% more accurate. Here's a question for you. Do you think the ones who showed the bigger increase were the higher or lower levels? Anyone like to have a go at that? I reckon they were the lower levels. Lower, exactly, yes. The ones that showed a 25, 24, 30, there were quite a few in the teens and the 20s. They were your A2, B1 level. The higher levels, the B1 plus, the B2s, the C1s, they showed less increase. So there's another interesting thing. The lower the level, the more you can benefit from planning. Okay, so that's a kind of summary of the research. And as I said, I set out to try and fill this gap. Are you more accurate when you plan? And that's 10 students. There were 50 students in total. No, I've just shown you 10 just as an illustration. There were 50 in total, which was statistically significant. Okay, so what did you think is the figure? Evelina, 85, 90, 85, 80, 80. Hey, you're good. 5, 80. Well, you're either very, very good or you've seen this before. But when the learners plan, on average, so there was 11% increase, which is significant. In the classroom, practical level, if you plan and you can make 2 or 3 fewer errors, that can only be a good thing. Okay, in terms of the positive feeling, etc., in terms of helping you develop your language. Okay, so basically I set out to try and show, are you more accurate when you plan? And the research was quite compelling. It showed that you are. Okay, so what are the implications of this? Well, and why does it happen? Well, it's kind of grounded in Levelt's 3 stages of speech processing. And basically what happens is that the first stage is the conceptualization. You decide what you want to say. That we call this your propositional content. Okay. after the propositional content, you formulate that into linguistic content. And then the third stage of Levelt's speech processing is, of course, articulation. And what happens when you plan the task is that you get your propositional content out of the way. You decide, you've thought of what you want to say. You also maybe start to formulate it linguistically. But the key thing is, because you've already got the content and some of the linguistic content, when you speak, you can focus purely on linguistic content. You're not having to think about what to say. You can focus on how to say it, and you're therefore more accurate. And this language that you've maybe got in your brain that we maybe don't always use, you've got the opportunity to use it. Okay, so implications for the classroom. Okay, have a quick read of those two quotes. So Pauline Foster, as I said, pre-task planning in speaking activities is her thing. It allows you to devote attention to both form and content rather than forcing them to choose one at the expense of the other. If you just said, talk about this, go, some learners may be focused on form and they would be very deliberate and very accurate, but maybe at the expense of content. Others may be blah, 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 very content-based, but maybe at the expense of accuracy. And this simple few minutes planning enables you to combine the two. And Scott Thornbury, I'm a huge fan of Scott Thornbury. Talking about something with which they are familiar will be easier for accuracy than if they create something new from scratch. And you become familiar with it, and you become more familiar with it during the planning stage. You've got that familiarity established, so then when you do speak, you're more accurate. Okay, so implications. Well, to me, I think if we inform our learners of the usefulness of planning, and when you do the planning, before you speak, whatever speaking task, if we go back to the speaking tasks at the beginning, the debate, the presentation, the survey, etc., etc., allow the learners a little bit of time to think about what they might want to say and how to say it. Yes? And I think that then we can introduce planning time across the board. And what do I mean by across the board? In all kinds of speaking activities. I think maybe if we just take a little bit of time before you do it, just get the learners into the sort of the idea of planning. Allow them a little bit of planning time. Hey, think about what you want to say and think about how you might say it. Anticipate the language if it's a debate, if it's a presentation or an anecdote. It's a little more straightforward. Okay, so in all kinds of speaking activities, I think we just should allow our learners a little more time to think and plan. As we've seen, their performance can be much, much improved. We can write our own activities. As teachers, I don't know whether any of you write your own activities, but if you do, plan in a little bit of planning time. And in terms of material design, I think a lot of coursebook writers and authors should maybe incorporate a bit of planning time into their material. So here's one example where we've done this. And this is from Language Hub, and this is based on Alejandra. This is based on my student, my participant who talked about Shrek. And here in the Language Hub, we've got somebody talking about Shrek. And as you can see, it's very much based on my actual participant. It's very much based on realistic language. And what we've done is we've introduced this planning stage. Sorry, this important planning stage. And I think that if we get into the idea of having a planning stage incorporated into activities, our students will be more fluent. They'll be more accurate, which can only be a good thing in terms of their confidence. Okay, so even if you have an activity where there isn't a planning stage built in, I think if you can take some time and allow that, that can only be a good thing. Okay, so you're going to talk about a work of art that you know or like. Thinking about the activity that we just did with talk about a film, what kind of questions, if you want your learners to talk about a work of art that they know or like, what kind of questions could you give them to help them prepare what they want to say? Where is it? Why do you like it? Good. Who is the author or the artist? Where did you see it? Excellent. Is it a painting, a statue? What kind of art is it? When is it from? When is it dated? Can you describe it? Excellent. Okay. Who did it? Describe the colors. What style is it? Excellent. What does it remind you of? Yeah. Okay. How does it make you feel? Excellent. So instead of just saying, talk about a work of art, go. If you say, talk about a work of art, and here are some things to think about. Spend a few minutes, make notes, or you don't have to make notes, and then speak. As the research that we have looked at shows, your performance, your speaking will hopefully be significantly improved in terms of fluency, and as my research showed, hopefully in terms of accuracy. Okay, and that's an activity again from Language Hub in a unit on art. Okay. Is brainstorming a good way to use timing? Well, I think so. It can give ideas. Yes, I think brainstorming can. Okay. So I've kind of got to the end of my webinar now. As I said, just to recap, it was 3 things. Thinking about extended speaking. What is it? Why is it useful? Why is it important? We then looked at the usefulness, the relevance, the importance of planning, and I hope that's given you something to think about. And at the same time, we also looked at a little bit of research connected with planning, but to give you a little an insight into the fact that behind a lot of the exercises and activities and things in course books, there is some quite serious research behind it. So I'm just now going to say thank you. And I think we have a few minutes. So maybe I can ask a few questions. Sarah, what was your question? Remind me of your question. I remember your question, but I can't. The things are moving really quickly. Sarah, if you can ask your question again. I'm looking out for Sarah's question. Edu-games is good. I'm a big fan of playing games in the classroom. I do a workshop on grammar games. I'm a big fan of using games, edu-games, or games in general. Yes. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Getting the students to speak without planning. Yes, that's more representative of the real world in general, perhaps. Yes, the authors. There you go. Perhaps you can get a copy of this if you contact Macmillan. These are selected references. These are all people who have been involved in the field of academic research on planning before you speak. As I said, it really is a very well-researched area. There are some references. I don't know whether you can do a screen grab of that, or if you contact Macmillan, I hope they can send you a copy of that. Or if you contact me, ask for those references. I will happily send you them myself.
So, John, okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mike.
Hi. Yep. So, mate, I'll interrupt just for 2 seconds. I mean, John, sure. A huge thank you to you for a brilliant session. On behalf of everyone here at Macmillan Education, and a big thank you to everyone who's joined us online. Over 500 teachers from all around the world. So it's a great honor for us, and I know John will agree with me that we appreciate how busy you all are, and to take an hour of your time to spend it with us. It's a great privilege for us. I also want to say a quick thank you to Federica, who works here at Macmillan, who does all of the hard work behind the scenes. So a big thank you to her. And just a reminder to everybody, you will get your certificate for attending today's webinar. We'll send that straight to your email inbox, and you'll get that in the next day or two. So you don't have to do anything. That will come straight through to you. Also, a quick reminder that our next webinar is on the 11th of December. So you register in the same place, and we've got the wonderful Deborah Healy doing a talk on effective gamification. And also, I think I mentioned before the webinar, you can find the recordings from previous webinars. If you've got colleagues who can't join us live, we've recorded John's session and we'll release that next week. So just check the webinar page for that. And we also have a blog for teachers, which is free and is on the One Stop English website. And of course, don't forget our wonderful course, Language Hub. So if you look at languagehub.macmillan English, you can find out all about the course. And of course, John was one of the authors of that course. So, John, have we got a few minutes for some questions?
Well, yeah, I just saw a question from Floriana, and I think I tried to type an answer in, and she said, could we do this for more, I think she said higher level, more mature, advanced students on topics such as science and politics? I think you can. I think this is the beauty of these kind of activities where you give the prompts. Almost any topic is possible. I would probably say just about every topic is possible with just a little bit of careful thought, like we did at the end. You want to talk about art. What are some interesting prompts to get some interesting discussion? So I think politics, you probably could do it. Sciences, social sciences. I suspect any topic, as I said, just get some prompts that sort of help the learners think about things that maybe they wouldn't think about if they were speaking spontaneously. So in answer to Floriana's question, yes. And Sarah's question, I'm still looking for Sarah's question. It keeps appearing and then flying by, and it's going a bit too quick. So I'm sorry, Sarah, that I haven't answered your question. I'm looking out for it.
There's a question
allowed to use their notes?
Yeah.
Mike?
So I was going to say that question keeps popping up. Are students allowed to use their notes when speaking?
I think that's your call in the classroom. I wouldn't want them to read a script. I think if they're giving a presentation, notes are fine, or even in the activities like Alejandra speaking about Shrek. I think if she's got a few little notes, prompts, maybe one word prompt, family, music, I think that's fine. I think if there's too many notes, it maybe detracts from the spontaneity and the fluency. But I think that's your call in the classroom. How do you maximize the impact of planning for high level students? It's harder for them to see the benefit. There are benefits. As I said, and my research showed that it was the lower levels that had a bigger increase in accuracy and the higher levels had less, but there still was significant increase in accuracy. And I think if you point that out, quote my research, quote some of the research that, basically evidence suggests that if you plan, you think about what to say, you can focus more on how to say it, you're going to be more accurate. Even if it's just a little bit, it's going to be definitely a positive thing. Okay. Any more questions? I have 70 students, somebody just says, well, you can get them in 35 pairs or 20-something groups of 3. Monitoring is going to be an issue, of course, but I think even if you've got a class of 2 or a class of 70, you can probably still get them doing these activities. And then you're just going to have to monitor and make sure people are on task as much as possible. How do you correct your learners' mistakes? Well, again, that depends on my context, the situation. I'm a big fan of, while they're speaking, a few notes that I'm jotting down. Then at the end, we can maybe have a little feedback session and maybe get them to reformulate. On the whole, not to interrupt the students to correct them and disturb their flow. Some students like that. I've had students in the past said, I want you to stop me every time I make a mistake. Again, it's your call, but I'm a fan of making notes, letting them speak, and then doing a little feedback session afterwards. students that don't prepare when you give them time. Sarah, in capital letters, I got it there. I got it. Thank goodness I finally got your question. So I think, Sarah, you're saying basically that if you give them planning time and they don't plan, well, I guess that's down to our teacher management. I guess, you know, if we've got them into the sort of the zone, if you like, got them into the flow, the idea of this planning time is very useful. Hopefully they will use it positively. But of course, there probably are going to be students who you've given them a few minutes, they're going to get on their phones or look out of the window. I guess that's a classroom management thing, to be honest. But if you can, you know, convince them that it's very useful for their language development, hopefully they will use the time as intended. And yes, a lack of time in the classroom, yes. But I think if we can find that time, I think it's time well spent. Okay. Mike, do we have more time, or are we going to...
Should we do one more question if there's one last question?
Okay. To guess the students speak without any planning. Well, yes, I mean, the classroom is an artificial place anyway. I guess that, you know, the idea of planning in the classroom, as we said, their production is improved, which is a good thing for their confidence. It's a good thing for their language development, which then will manifest itself when they speak more spontaneously without planning. I guess it's all about getting, you know, developing their interlanguage, which they can then draw on more readily when they don't plan. So, you know, I'm not saying they should plan every single thing, but I think we do it. I think it is a real world skill. So, you know, the more it's basically helping them to develop their language, which in context when they don't plan can hopefully be a benefit. Good,
okay.
Adnan. I hope you do practice. Give your students a bit of planning time and see how they respond, and see if it, you know, hopefully they'll appreciate it.
John, thank you very much, and
okay, you're very welcome. Thank you everybody for attending. I do hope it was interesting, something to take away, and thanks for being here. And hopefully I'll see you all again somewhere online, or maybe in your place of work.
Great. Thank you so much, John. And I think it's been a brilliant session, and we can see that from all of the interaction, all the comments from the chat box. So I hope, guys, that you've enjoyed this session. If you've got colleagues who are interested and are free later on, John is actually coming back to do the webinar again at 4 p.m. UK time. So do encourage your colleagues to register the way that you did as well. And again, the recording will be released next week. But John, on behalf of everyone here at Macmillan Education, a huge thank you, a thoroughly enjoyable and insightful webinar. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. And one last time, a big thank you to you teachers. We really appreciate the fact that you join us. And I know that some of you join us every time we do one of these webinars. So thank you very much. We know how busy you are. And of course, you get your reward, which is the beautiful Advancing Learning certificate, which will be sent to your inbox. And do join us again on the 11th of December for the Deborah Healy's webinar on gamification. Just that's the website. There's macmillanenglish.com/webinars. We keep updating that with the new program. So if you're interested in what's coming up, visit there, and we'll have all the times on there, and you can register the usual way. So some of you just registered. Well done. Thank you. So I'll see you all again on the 11th. I think a couple of questions about the time. Deborah is based in the States, so we've had to change the time slightly. So if I remember rightly, it's 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. UK time. But all the information is there on the website. So thanks, everyone. See you again soon. Bye-bye.